Welcome to the Leader Mentality Show with Rob Clemens in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. As always, we are at the Myrtle Beach Business Center here, and I have a special guest today. But before we get into introducing that special guest, I want to talk a little bit about business ownership. The ultimate dream for a lot of people in America. When you talk about the American dream, we talk about this is a country where you can own your own home. You can own your own business. You can be your own boss in a sense. But there's so many dynamics that go into being a business owner and running a successful business. So today, I want to talk about exactly that. And if you've thought about opening a business, if you own a business right now, and you sometimes have that feeling of you're at the top by yourself, it's lonely at the top, as people say, I want to share a little something with you from a real life entrepreneur that I work with closely every day. He's also a person that helps me on the Leader Mentality Show as the producer. And he's also our newest member of the Carolina Bays Real Estate and Construction team. So I want to welcome to the show, Frank Dominick. How's it going, buddy?
Hey, great.
Good.
As always.
Yeah, well,
every day is great here in South Carolina.
No, I'm saying welcome to the show, but anybody who has actually been on the show with us knows that Frank is a leader mentality producer. So he is the one behind the scenes. A lot of times when we have guests coming on, he'll be a part of introducing you and getting the filming going and all those other kind of things. Did I say that right, Frank?
Yeah, official title is Guy Behind the Guy.
Guy behind the guy. That's the GBG, if you're wondering.
Or then when you say, I know someone, I'm that someone.
Yeah, Frank does pride himself on knowing people. And but you know what? That's been helpful for us because when you look at the leader mentality, our whole thing is about connecting to the community, and we want to inspire leadership within people. So sometimes it's just about who you know and how you can connect people to other people, and that's a big part of what we do, right?
I like to say it's like a communication conduit. You're the connection between, let's say, two different industries. We'll touch maybe an attorney, and then maybe touch somebody who's going to do real estate, which we do, and somebody who does some construction, and then maybe somebody who's going to do ancillary items there.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you remember when we talked about, we did the show with Brett from Tide Law Firm, and Brett shared his book, The Tipping Point, with me, and in that book I really loved it because it has some things about connectors. It talks about a connector, and a connector is connecting each person to other people, and if you're a true, like, level 10 connector, according to this book, it will put you into a zone where connectors, you want to know them because they are literally, they take pride in knowing as many people as possible, knowing details about those people. So anyway, very good stuff. Well, Frank, so this is your first time actually on the mic with us on the show, and so I'd love the people to get a chance to get to know you a little bit. Tell us a little bit about your backstory and how you got to where you're at.
I'm originally from Baltimore. I lived in Baltimore for about 31 years. Then I moved up to central Pennsylvania. Most of that time I was in some form of industrial sales, whether it being building products or HVAC equipment. And then at some point when I met my current wife in the early 2000s, she was a state employee, and we both kind of decided we wanted to have a little more control of our destiny and what we were doing with our life. So we had a few years where we tried to plan a business, and we went through many inclinations and many plans of what we thought about doing. One was a music shop, because like to fancy myself as a musician. I played in some local bands in the market here and in central PA. Another one was a coffee shop. Then they took off with Starbucks in every corner of everywhere.
So you couldn't get a Starbucks franchise or something? Did they do that? Did you look that far?
You can, but it's it's a costly endeavor for your first time out.
Fair enough.
Plus very competitive. Then we kind of stumbled onto a restaurant concept that we picked up from our travels to China. My wife's Chinese, so we spent some time there, and we opened up a Pan-Asian restaurant where we covered a bunch of different cuisines, and we did that for about 11 years.
Okay, very cool. I like the fact that you're mentioning about controlling your own destiny. A lot of times I'm sitting here, I'm talking to people who are successes in businesses, and I wonder what drives you to do that in the first place. And I feel like a lot of times there's nothing wrong with working with other people or working for other people. But once in a while, you get that inclination of, I want to start a business. And there may be people listening to the show right now who are thinking, I might want to start a business one day. Tell me about the good parts and maybe some of the not so good parts of owning a business.
Good parts are the ability to put your stamp on the business. You have an idea, you can see it through fruition. A lot of times when you're in a corporate structure, there's a lot of red tape you have to cut through. There's a lot of that's not the way we do it here.
Mm-hmm.
And you might run up not every place, but some people will push back because it's not in their comfort zone. Whereas a business owner, your comfort zone is vast because, as you know, with Carolina-based and the leader mentality, it's always your job. There's nothing where you can say, that's not my job.
Right.
You do it all.
Well, and I think that's important to know. A lot of times when people are thinking about getting into business, they say things like, I don't want to have a boss. And I'm saying you're going to trade off having maybe one boss for having thousands of bosses.
Thousands of bosses.
As many customers as you have, that's how many bosses you have.
100%. 100%.
You'll never take a vacation the same when you're a business owner, right?
No.
What was something you learned from the restaurant industry? Because you came in with no restaurant industry experience, right?
No, I had, of course, like any other person growing up, I worked in restaurants, but running a restaurant, it never happened until I owned one. Wow. I always say that if my wife and I had two whiteboards and we were drawing out what we thought we knew about the industry from being customers and diners for years, I did a lot of traveling in sales, ate a lot of different meals, and then transferred that information I thought I knew to what I actually found out about the restaurant industry. It's almost two blank boards. Nothing really crosses over. Other than there's food involved and somebody's paying.
Right.
Other than that, everything you could possibly think of, it's different from perceptions of when it's busy or what people like. It's crazy.
It's just a different world. Would you say that as far as a business owner, I've known some owners who are singers or maybe even guitar players and things, and sometimes they'd like to come out and entertain their guests. Would you ever come out and break out your guitar and just start jamming?
Not directly. I would touch, my wife or I would touch every table throughout our industry. We had different phases of our lifespan. In the very beginning, we were more of, I would say, owners that unlocked the doors and had a large staff. So we were, I would say, glorified hostesses.
Okay, right.
Host and hostesses. We would greet every table. Everybody knew our faces. The second or third inclination, I morphed into the kitchen. I taught myself how to make all the dishes just to have more control over the quality of the food. And then my wife became the face. And then she morphed into making, we had sushi in our restaurant, so my wife took up that skill, became very, very good at it. And we had a front of the house manager, and he became the face for a period.
Okay.
Then we had an intermittent period where we shut down. We did some traveling. We were going to try to sell the building that we had purchased. My wife had 2 back surgeries, and I took a job working for a guy used to be a client of mine when I was in sales. So I did that for about 1.5 years, and then we reopened the restaurant. Then we ran it for another 4 years, and then that inclination of the restaurant, and that version, we were basically the faces again. Everybody knew us. But it's funny, we had some customers at the restaurant that started with us in 2011, and they were, had moved away. That's the other part about any business is you lose 20% annually just by people moving on to other products.
Is it that high? 20%? Well, I guess it depends on where you're at, right?
Yeah, it depends. Also, think about it. When you dine out at your favorite restaurant, is it your favorite restaurant for 20 years, or was it your favorite restaurant for 5 or 6 years?
Right.
And then you find that other place where like, oh my gosh, that's so good. It's new. It's fresh. And then they come back. We had customers from 2011 that came back in 2022. On our last year open.
Wow, that's pretty cool. It's nice to have that loyalty of brand. As far as a restaurant in particular, I've always kind of wondered this. You have the manager. You said you go around and touch every table, right? And I think that's so important.
Very important. Because
as a client of I'm saying a client, as a customer, somebody coming in and, you want good food, but the service is very underrated in the restaurant industry. So you go around, you touch every table, great in itself. But what would you find your typical customer was like? Are most of them just like, yeah, the food was good and they expect you to move on, or do more of them want to sit there and talk with you about everything?
I would say a higher percentage want to have some sort of interaction because to me, that was very relevant because I remember as a young kid from a very large family. So my whole family to go out to dinner was an occasion. And we would go to a couple local restaurants, usually independently owned. I lived on the water in Maryland. That's where I grew up. And one restaurant in particular we went to, I remember my dad talking to the gentleman who was walking around. He had, a bib on, so to speak, like an apron. And I was like, do you know him? And he's like, oh, no, but that's the owner. But the way he presented himself to my father was that they were friends.
Okay.
And that made an impression on me that must have shown through when I became a restaurant owner myself.
Wow, that's cool.
But also my personal nature, I'm actually generally curious. As you know, working with me.
That's right.
I mean, I could rattle you with a lot of questions.
I call him Inspector Frank. I know.
I just haven't, I think that helped me in all facets of sales and business is that I'm generally curious.
Yeah. Well, I could see that. And I think it's important. Curiosity, as any business owner, that's going to be a big part of what you got to do. Curiosity with new business products that you could be using,
100%.
New foods you should be introducing, just different ways of marketing yourself. So curiosity, big part of being any great leader. So let's go there. You talked a little bit with me beforehand about you opened up the business originally and you had a certain menu that you were going to do. And you said you had to pivot with that.
Oh, yeah.
And before you answer that, I want to underscore how important this is. If you're a business owner right now, if you're a new business owner, if you're thinking about owning a business, we chart a course. We make a mission statement and a vision statement and a product offering and all these things. And then you get into it and you might realize that you need to adapt. Tell us a little bit about what you learned there and how that went.
One of the things that took place is my wife and I considered when we opened our restaurant, you know, a lot of people are a sushi restaurant,
Right.
or they're a Thai restaurant, or a Chinese restaurant. One of the focuses we had for our business was the Chinese hot pot, which is, intents and purposes, it's sort of like a higher end version of the melting pot, where you're giving raw meats and vegetables and things and pastas, and you cook them in front of you. Makes a stew. Great idea, great celebratory meal, hugely popular in China. Huge undertaking to do here in the States. As far as educating your customer, the amount of prep it takes.
What do you mean by educating the customer? Were they coming in and just going, what do I do
Well,
here?
you bring out a tray of thinly sliced raw meats, and they're beautifully rolled up and displayed, and as they're talking and not cooking, they wilt because they're frozen meats that are paper thin, so they cook in the hot broth. And take the broth flavor in. But long story short, it became a cuisine. It was 3% of our business, and the entire restaurant was built around that.
Wow.
Now, just prior to us open, we had a restaurant we used to frequent had just shut down. Their chef offered his services to make sushi at the time. So we're like, okay, we thought about that. And he goes, well, I know a guy that does this. So we hired 2 additional chefs and we made it a 3-pronged business. We had 3 kitchens in our restaurant.
Wow.
We had a Thai chef, we had a sushi chef, both with assistants, and then the hot pot, which was cooked at the table. So essentially we had a few prep people for that, and the customers or clients would make that at the table. Well, a few years into it, we realized that is literally less than 3% of our business, but 70% of our prep.
Wow. Think about that, the resource time going in, and now you're thinking, I'm spending 70% of time doing this, and it's only bringing in 3% of my income. I could spend that 70% marketing or the things that we're actually selling.
Or focusing on the dishes that are selling, absolutely.
Well, okay, so this is an important thing for anybody to remember. Track what you're doing.
100%.
Can you imagine if you weren't tracking that and you're sitting there putting all that time in? You may have never been the successful business you were because you could have really jammed that idea down everybody's throat and never really made anything
But
of it.
if you look at 100% of the pie, you take a 3% sliver, it's pretty small.
It's pretty
So you can report on it. It's very important. With the other dishes, yes, that was very important. But with that aspect, it was pretty important.
You know, maybe if you decide to start a nonprofit restaurant, that might work. But otherwise, 3%, not very good.
You know, and another thing that was a pivot was midway through our run as a restaurant owners, we had a dispute with the kitchen staff, and it was more of a demands made both ways, and we could not see eye to eye, so we had to separate ourselves from our chefs. So at that point, you're looking at a Caucasian gentleman who learned how to make traditional Thai dishes in a traditional wok format. That was a big hurdle to cross, but that gave us more control. So think about it. We opened the restaurant in 2011 with a large kitchen staff. And at the end of our business, my wife and I were the kitchen staff.
Man, I think that's really cool. And again, more lessons for a new business owner. In fact, I think that might be the whole topic of this show. It's new business owners because ultimately, a lot of times we start off with a dream. You know, I want to own a bar, I want to own a retail shop, I want to own a baseball card store.
I want to be a business owner.
Whatever it happens to be, right? And then you get into it and you're so reliant on other people. And the minute that reliance drops off, what do? Throw in the towel, or do you get more invested in the business? Do you become more dynamic? That's what you did. You were like, hey, I'm going to learn how to make this stuff myself.
I have to. We made, from that point on, another interesting tidbit was at the end of our run of a restaurant, which was a compass total of 11 years, basically. At the very end, we had more compliments on our food than we did when we first opened. And at the end, it was my wife and I making everything from start to finish. I butchered all the meats. She trimmed down all the salmon fish that was used for the sushi. Everything was cut by hand, vegetable-wise and fish-wise.
Boy.
All the sauces were made in
And you caught all of the animals too beforehand, right?
I did not do that.
Okay. I really want to make this special for the...
But if you take the social media aspect, being a musician,
Yeah.
you know, I had Facebook videos for marketing and commercials online. I scored all the music that was behind them.
Wow.
I took all the pictures, shot all the video.
Very
So
cool.
whenever you looked up my restaurant online and saw videos of the food and somebody cooking, it was me cooking it. That was me, my phone on a tripod, and the music pumped through was music I recorded in my house.
And as a business owner, you do learn and get good at a lot of things. Absolutely. Well, let's move on to your new career a little bit here. So you are helping with the Leader Mentality Show, and we're on the Leader Mentality Show right now. So my only thing I'll say is, if you're out there, you need help with leadership, you want to get into getting your company promoted in the public, Frank and I can help you with that. So we'll kind of go there. Do you have any one good leadership tip you'd like to share before we jump on to other subjects?
Always be open to suggestion. I think a lot of people have that control issue where they, as you said earlier, I don't want a boss.
Yeah.
So they are almost an iron fist ruler. That's not going to be conducive to keeping a staff happy with you. You have to be open. You have to always be the leader. And sometimes the leader is not being vocal. Sometimes that's showing by example.
Man, Frank, I'm so glad you said that. And I think that a lot of times your heart is in the wrong place. If you're opening a business for selfish reasons, your heart's in the wrong place. Now, I understand it. We all have to have that drive in the first place. So I'm not saying being a little selfish is something, you know, you probably need to do. But once you get there, you got to understand you have a team here. No team ever successfully was run by closing your ears to ideas.
Oldest thing in the world is there's no I in team.
Well, right, exactly. And you know, it's a great phrase that was created for a reason.
100%.
So I love that. And so, again, anybody, come see us, Frank and Rob. We'd love to help you with your leadership of your company. The last thing for today is, let's talk about Carolina Bays. You actually joined the real estate team with us, and you have, as most people who get into the real estate industry have done, you need to try to find a niche. Tell us a little bit about what your goals are with Carolina Bays.
My goals are to be a new construction specialist and also somebody who can help Northerners, which I'm one of. I'm originally from Baltimore, then my restaurant was in PA, so I lived there for 20 years. I found it very relaxing to be in a warmer southern climate. And we have a very developing area, so if there's anybody that's on the fence and thinking about making that move to the south, I'm your guy.
What's a new construction specialist? Why is that important to you?
So many people are not sure what they want, what kind of homes they want, what kind of options are out there. And when you look at some of the new communities we have, there's so many different options as far as layout. And something you have made the comment as being a builder yourself, they've worked out all the kinks as far as how homes are put together, like where the laid ductwork out, how the kitchen lays out. A lot of these new floor plans that the builders are doing down here are such open concepts. They're very pleasing and very easy to adapt to.
Well, I'll say this, and this is true of anybody who goes to real estate school, and if you're a aspiring realtor, I will say, you're not going to learn about construction when you're getting your real estate licenses. You're really not even going to learn how to be a salesperson when you're getting your real estate license. And therefore, a lot of people get into this industry, they come in and they're trying to find what they can do. But yourself, you're trying to find the people who might be considering buying, but more specifically even buying new construction. And I know you said you're all things real estate. You'll do listings and you'll 100%. Do buying services. But to be able to go out and say, hey, I've got a good community for you, that's really important. And as you and I have been kind of going around the beach here, we've met some good people from different companies. We had Great Southern in. D.R. Horton makes some good communities. And of course, we have lots of builders that we know from the industry. What is a good reason to build new construction in your mind if you're talking to the buyers right now?
warranty right off the bat. You get a new home warranty. Another recent addition in the last year has been some of the builders are offering the point buy down on the mortgage rate. So, you know, if you're going to see, when this goes to air, the current interest rate is going to be climbing, I believe, unfortunately.
Right.
But if you're in the 8%, there's some of these builders that are offering 6% interest rates on your mortgage, or 6.5%. That's a huge savings in the life of your loan. Huge.
It's a huge savings, and that's a big reason to do it. We also look at things like do the house your own way. Sometimes you can still make some of your own calls, especially if you're doing custom homes. And one of the better things to me is when you're building a new home, you get the best warranties, you get the best building science, so whether that's hurricane proofing, whether it's energy efficiency. And
the layout, like I said earlier, the layout, some of these concepts, they're laid out so much better, because when you look at a national builder that's building 50,000 homes a month across the country, they have worked every kink out that you could even think would be an option.
That's right. And look, as a guy who came from the custom home building industry, and we're still, you know, obviously offering custom homes, we'll do a few of those this year. But the real deal is that's figuring out the science of that individual home every time. Imagine you go into some of these communities where they built this home 1,000 times, 2,000 times. I think D.R. Horton's, I think they said they have something like, 85,000 homes right now?
It's about 80,000 a month.
They've got a big offering. So, well, anyway, Frank, this has been some great stuff today. I think a lot of value comes to the people from exactly what you said, as a business owner, as a leader mentality person that's helping people promote and grow their businesses, and also just being in the real estate industry and getting that opportunity to do a new thing. And you've already dominated one field of the restaurant industry. This will be a good shot for you to get out. So I really appreciate you being on the show, man.
Thanks for having me.
All right, awesome. And I also want to thank all of our Leaders List members, everybody from Bob Baldwin, who made these fancy hats at Coastal Marketing Graphics. Also want to thank the Carolina-based real estate and construction team for always being a sponsor of the show. And if you're thinking about promoting your business, I'd welcome you to call Frank or I about possibly getting onto the Leaders List. For now, I'm going to sign off on the show. Let's all have a great day, and we hope you'll like and share us on Facebook, other social media, and we'll see you all next time on the Leader Mentality Show.